Welcome to our AP Human Geography video.
So Unit 1 talks about scale, and that refers to like the portion of the Earth being studied or like displayed on the map. And there's like also different map projections and stuff like Mercator, Conic, Robinson, and the Peters projections. And then like Unit 1 also talks about geospatial technology, and that includes like GPS and GIS. And GPS like tells you where you are in the world, and like GIS stores all the data that the GPS uses. And yeah, that's basically Unit 1.
Unit 2 talks about Malthusian's theory that population will outgrow food supply. And it also talks about the demographic transition model that explains why countries' populations grow. And it also talks about types of migration like forced migration and voluntary migration. An example of voluntary migration would be a chain migration, which is when someone follows another person, like a relative, when they move, and it also like a guest worker, which is when somebody moves out to like a country for economic opportunity because they're in labor shortage. And then an example of forced migration would be like a refugee, which is forced out of their country due to dangerous conditions. And then another example of forced migration would be an asylum seeker who is looking for refugee status so that they could escape their country. And then that's Unit 2.
Unit 3 talks about folk cultures and pop culture. And folk cultures are cultures that like practice traditional beliefs and customs, while like pop culture is like popular and it like spread around the whole world. It also talks about like the major religions in the world being Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, with Christianity being the largest. And it also mentions like the hearths of each religion, and then with them being for Judaism, Jerusalem, Christianity, Jerusalem, and then Islam would be Mecca and Medina. And but the most important thing it talks about is cultural landscape and how like humans change the landscape based on their culture and their beliefs. And yeah.
Unit 4 talks about supranational organizations like NATO, which is a military alliance, and it talks about the EU, which is European Trade Alliance. It also talks about types of boundaries, like political boundary, which is a legally defined boundary, and it talks about boundary disputes like allocation, which is when two countries fight over a resource that's right by both of their boundaries. It also mentions the heartland theory, which is the theory that if you control the hearth of Afro-Eurasia, you gain control over the world. And talks about the rimland theory, which is the theory that if you control the coastal land surrounding that area, then you gain control of the world because you gain control of the resources and eventually take over the heartland theory, or the heartland. And talks about nation states and state definitions, and yeah, that's what.
In Unit 5, it talks about von Thunen's model, and that explains agricultural land use in relation to like the market location. And like the first ring of the model has like dairy farming and like the market gardening. The second ring has forests for fuel and like timber to build houses. The third ring has grains and field crops because they can be like transported without them like going bad. And the fourth ring is like ranching, like animals and stuff. Because like there's a lot of land needed and it's cheaper farther away from the city. It also talks about agricultural revolutions, with the first one being like from humans going from hunter and gatherers to like farming and stuff, and the second one being the Industrial Revolution with improved farming techniques, and the last one was the Green Revolution with high yield crops, fertilizers, and GMOs. And then it talks about types of agriculture, with them being subsistence farming, which is like farming for your family, like for yourself to eat. And then like it also talks about commercial farming, which is like farming that's like grown on a large scale to make a lot of money. And it also talks about slash and burn, or shifting cultivation, and that's when you cut down a bunch of trees and like burn it to the ground, because it fertilizes the ground and it like makes a lot of clear land to grow stuff. So yeah.
Unit 6 talks about the types of cities, like a meta city, which has a population of over 20 million people. And it also talks about world cities, which exert their influence beyond their national boundaries. Unit 6 also mentions the urban systems, like the rank size theory, which is that a city's population will be inversely proportionate to their rank in the urban hierarchy. And then urban models like concentric zone and sector zone, which are areas that explain the spatial layout of cities. Also urban population challenges like urban decay, which is the deterioration of urban area due to neglect, and redlining, which is where banking like refuses loans, which can lead down like to it could get rid of development. Yeah. And yeah, that's Unit 6.
7 covers economic sectors, with those being primary, which is like farming and resource extraction; secondary, which is like manufacturing and stuff; tertiary, which is like more service based, and like banking and retail stuff; quaternary is like knowledge based, like teaching and stuff like that; and quinary is like high level decision making with like CEOs and stuff. Unit 7 also talks about development indicators, with those being like GDP per capita, which shows like income like of a person in the country; HDI, which is Human Development Index, and it shows like how developed a country is using like a bunch of different factors and stuff; literacy rate shows like how many people in the country can read and write; and life expectancy shows how long somebody lives. Unit 7 also includes Rostow's theory of development, which states countries develop in like five stages of development, I guess, from traditional to mass consumption. Another theory it states is Wallerstein's theory, which states there are like core countries, semi-periphery, and periphery countries, and the core countries exploit the semi and periphery countries like for their economic benefit and stuff. So yeah, that's Unit 7.